Welcome back to Albert Park in Melbourne, Australia, as we continue opening day with another hour of free practice for 11 teams and 22 drivers in Formula 1 2026. Formula 1 will be racing on this circuit for the 29th time on Sunday, and in this session we'll see who's quick over one lap and who's quick over heavy fuel. 5.2 kilometres, 3.2 miles, and plenty of occasions to use the active aero. There's the single overtake detection point, which can give you overtake mode for the entire lap if you're within 1 second of the car in front. 14 turns, many of them famous around Albert Park, and we've seen running already on the soft, the medium, not the hard so far, as we approach the second hour of practice. And look at the day that we have for you. What an occasion, the start of the Formula 1 World Championship in 2026, and it's time for a second hour of running as we welcome you up to the commentary box for 150 metres. I've been told that we are not coming up to the commentary box. Would have loved to invite you up, but we're 150 metres before turn number 1, and it essentially means we get a good view of a blur on the first lap, Jolyon Palmer. It is a great day once again, and finally, and I think really intriguingly, we're going to see what Mercedes actually have in the locker in this session.
I really hope so, because it's been all Mercedes chat, but in terms of on-track performance, we're yet to see it. Throughout testing, throughout FP1 earlier on, they still are holding those cards very close to their chest. You can see the wind's picked up a little bit. The flags flying over the pit buildings there, showing how that's coming across. It's a tailwind into the first corner, so it's going to be difficult to have consistent braking down to turns 1 and 3. We saw a few lockups earlier on at 3, and I'm expecting more as the drivers and teams start pushing the limits. And yeah, will we see Mercedes start to push a little bit more?
Actually, you have to run in the specification that you'd be attacking in qualifying. There's only so much going in cold that you can do. Lando Norris had a gearbox issue earlier on. He is sitting in the car. He is ready to attack this session, having lost time, lost running, and not setting a push lap. It's a man who began life really nicely with Red Bull earlier on. Isaac Hadjar taking on the seat that so many great drivers have failed to master in recent time. Podium finisher Alex Albon, race winner Pierre Gasly, 6-time race winner Sergio Perez, all struggling to find the pace in relation to Max Verstappen. Isaac Hadjar earlier on, P4. P5, the man who's joined his old team. 18 years of age, our only rookie in the field, Arvid Lindblad, who had a huge amount of running on the final day of testing. Bit of a stuttering start out of the pit lane. They got it back to the garage, and he was P5, an outstanding lap.
Yeah, 22 laps on the board for him as well, so decent mileage and huge amount of pace that he unlocked. Busy. It is so busy as we're waiting for the green light. We've still got a while, but you can hear the revs rising. And you mentioned where we are. We're out the pit lane here on the right-hand side, 150 metres before turn 1, and I'm looking forward to seeing those cars appear in a blur, but seeing which one's going to be at the front, because there's a good chance this year it's not going to be the one that's on pole. The starts have been so erratic through testing, and that's why everyone's out there, and they want to try and get a practice launch immediately from the green light. Lando Norris, I think, was the car in the practice start box on the right-hand side, revving it up, spooling that turbo, which is all new.
Matteo Binotto in conversation in the garage. Eddie Irvine, who won this race in 1999. His first win in Formula 1 was the number 2 to the great Michael Schumacher, and only if Schumacher had a shocker or retired did he ever have a chance to go for victory. Took his chance in an entertaining Grand Prix here many years ago now. As we get the green light at the end of the pit lane and funnel out onto the circuit, Hülkenberg again, keeping this Audi tradition up of firing the car first onto the racetrack.
Yeah, still managing to be the first on track at all times. He had a great run in 99, didn't he, Eddie Irvine?
Nearly won the title.
No Michael Schumacher of Ferrari. Team pour it all behind Irvine for a title bid, and had a great run, just missing out at the end to Mika Häkkinen. Chooses the good races to come to as well. He's a good time guy.
Yeah, former Ferrari driver, and came very, very close to last race decider paddock as well. Sadly, Aston Martin not running with Fernando Alonso. The team explaining that the vibrations from the power unit too much to run the cars for a long time. No stint over 25 laps, but we've not seen them today. Now, we've got a front wing issue with George Russell. Has he peeled? Well, let's find out, because they're having to change things down there. They were stress testing it, and an unexpected change. Well, there are two options, Jolien. He's either hit a car or hit the pit wall.
It's a tight pit lane here. You have to put a lot of steering lock to get out. It's narrow, and I have seen a driver in the past just clip that wall heading out. But also, it was a busy pit lane, wasn't it, when George was trying to peel in? So that is not scheduled, surely. Let's see.
All right. Kimi Antonelli makes it into the pit lane, and it's the rookie driver, it's George Russell, and it's a bit of a mess down there in the pit lane as he damages the front wing. Got the Racing Bulls driver on the left.
This guy's just hit my front wing.
So they're supposed to go, as a technicality, in the order of which they get to the fast lane.
On book makes them in your favor. You have priority in the fast lane, same as quali.
And that is why you had Lindblad there being told he has priority there, because Russell wasn't in the fast lane with a wheel. So George had to let Arvid go, and he tried to then pull out and get that wheel in, but it was a bit late there. So completely unnecessary. Who cares if he starts the outlap behind Arvid Lindblad and slots in behind one more car for the start of an hour session? Better to do that than damage a part of the car. And let's not forget, this is the start of a new set of regs. It's the start of the season. They're not flush with parts. Any team, they'll patch up that front wing. It didn't look too bad, but it always baffles me that teams and drivers manage to run into each other. Colapinto.
Oh, Lewis Hamilton catching that late, and an issue with the lockup further on.
Yeah, someone's absolutely smoked. I think that was Lindblad smoked it in for a lockup. Colapinto's going again. There's your first sign of that braking becoming harder in towards turn one. Colapinto's issue, obviously something completely different. Norris super slow to start his flying lap, and then he's he's not going to go for that this time. He's just completed a steady lap.
Hamilton expecting Colapinto to be pushing. Colapinto on the main straight, and the drivers having to get used to the new era of Formula One and the differences that's going to mean to what they've been used to basically their entire careers.
He just had an issue there, though, didn't he? That wasn't any messing around with the battery or the power unit. That just looked
similar
like he was
to what we saw in FP1.
Yeah, just no drive. Let's see it from his point of view then.
Let's listen in.
It's got no drive. This was Piastri's issue earlier on. And so if you're Lewis Hamilton approaching from behind...
Car goes crazy slow on the pit straight.
Oh yeah, he had no drive, so he couldn't go anywhere apart from pull it off, but he's managed to get back out on circuit. So you also saw a view there of Lindblad smoking it into turn one on his first attempt.
This is on board with Max Verstappen, conking out before he gets to the practice grid spot. And Max Verstappen remains in that part of the pit lane. So that is not an issue that he's been able to control Alt-Delete. That is an issue that's going to require a pushback, exactly like we saw with the Red Bull Powertrains car of Arvid Lindblad earlier on. That Red Bull Powertrains Ford engine, new for this year.
Yeah, like an ignition issue there for Max. Just lost the engine in a very undramatic way. Is it a safety thing? Is a sensor picked up something and just shut it down, or is that the sign of something worse for Verstappen? You mentioned Lindblad earlier on. It was an identical thing, wasn't it, where the power just cut, and they did manage to get him out, as mentioned, for a decent 22-lap haul. So We're seeing similar issues for the same power unit teams. We saw, I mean, Colapinto's one looked exactly like Gasly, like Piastri earlier on. Mercedes power unit now in the Alpine for this year. That's a change, and he just lost drive. That looked exactly the same as Lindblad for Verstappen as well.
Sam Collins, our technical analyst, what did you make of it?
Well, I've just been watching Max, and he's still just finally now being pushed back down the pit lane, which we haven't seen for a while. But he was sat there for lap after lap. So when we were seeing Lewis Hamilton having that moment with the back of the Alpine, Max was already sitting down there at the end of the pit lane and has been there until just now. So clearly a bit of a problem for Red Bull. He thought he could get the car going, was arguing with the marshals or trying to convince the marshals to let him go, and he couldn't go. Clearly he was trying to get the car started. But all of that time sitting with a Formula 1 car with all of its hot bits, now you can see him on your screen now, surely that's going to be overheating the car. Formula 1 cars don't like to be sat still. They're not like your road cars where you've got a cooling fan under the engine bay. They just sit there and they're air cooled. You have to get that cooling flow through the car, otherwise it's just going to turn into a fireball pretty quickly.
And so once again, we see the car being pushed back. It was the junior team earlier on, it's the senior team this time, and Max Verstappen unable to get to the end of the pit lane, but crucially, because he's not gone too far, the team able to recover it, not over the control line, so thankfully no marshals required, and he's still got a lot of the session when they can reboot it, hopefully.
Yeah, and of course the car wasn't fired up. The whole reason he was stopped there was because the engine was off. Brakes, he'd only just literally left the garage, so he hadn't got brakes up to high temp, so it shouldn't be so dramatic for him at that moment. Hamilton, everyone's having the same massive energy harvest in towards turn 9 and 10. Hamilton is going fastest in both the first two sectors, yet it just seemed like he is effectively not accelerating anymore into that corner as the teams all have a super clip, so they're switching from deploying energy with the MG UK to harvesting it as he's flat out.
Yeah, as required for the rest of the lap. Just for your reference, there is no circuit on the Formula 1 calendar where braking alone would recharge the battery to the level that you need. So this is something that's going to be required throughout the season. But in circuits like this, where you have so many fast corners and the speed here was increased with the circuit changes a few years ago, that is why that long run, once you roar through turn 7, you are just on the throttle all the way to the high-speed chicane at 9 and 10. But even then, you're carrying a huge amount of speed through there before the braking zone of 11, which is one of the key overtaking points around this circuit.
Looking ugly for Russell, and he's lost that lap, yeah, with a scruffy final sector, armful of understeer through turn 13, struggling to get the front end, but then he's started to overheat the rear tyre as well. It was a narrower set of tyres this year, particularly that rear axle. So you're putting the heat through, and it's so much easier to slide and get that surface temperature up. And Russell, they're scrabbling through the final turn, having hooked up the first and second sector, missing out the final bit to Lewis Hamilton. But Mercedes immediately looking like they're trying a bit harder in FP2. Hard tyres for them, as it is for Ferrari and for McLaren, although Norris is back in the pits. We saw him have that strange end to the lap / start to the lap earlier on. He then came back in, so this is not looking like the great start to the day for the reigning champ.
A very odd plank mark left by the Audi there down the main straight. Got sparks flying off the back of the Audi, which we haven't seen from anyone else there. Piastri's gone up to P3. It's Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Kimi Antonelli, Charles Leclerc and Isaac Hadjar. A driver that's just gone up to 11th position. Franco Colapinto's got to explain why he was going unnecessarily slowly on the main straight later on.
Not hard to do, is it? I had no option. I'd stop the car or I go slowly. Well, what do you want me to do?
Arvid Lindblad is coming back to the pits after his headline-making FP1 earlier on, and his dramatic start to FP2 when he was having the world's slowest collision with George Russell in the fast lane of the pit.
Yeah, so the stewards have got a little bit to look at. They're warming up for the season as well, aren't they? Let's start with a 0.5 mile per hour incident and someone driving slowly when they had no choice but to drive slowly, and we'll see if we can deal with them competently and warm ourselves up for the bigger tasks ahead, but it's just surely going to come, hopefully not until race day. But with the way that we're seeing energy deployment, I can see that this is going to be a very unpredictable race.
Antonelli hits the front. Let's get a trackside view now from one Pablo Montoya. Who better than a two-time Indy 500 winner and seven-time Grand Prix winner to tell us what he makes of turns 1 and 2.
Hey guys, something is pretty cool. We're here at the exit of turn 2, and when the guys are pushing, see the cars how fast they accelerate. It's insane. It's kind of crazy. I know everybody needs to harvest energy and everything, but the acceleration of these cars, it is crazy and amazing to see. Something else that I noticed a lot is when people, the reason you've seen so many people get on the way, on the exits, and like that, nobody wants to get off the race line. Every time I've seen a couple of cars be off the race line here, and the amount of dirt that they come off is crazy. So you always gotta be careful. You see everybody when they're going slow, everybody on the race line. Nobody wants to pick up any dirt. So that's where a lot of the issues are coming from. Being a street course, yeah, the track cleans up really well. It looks really good, but it looks really good on the race line. But as soon as you get off the race line, you're gonna get in trouble. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the session develops, and we'll see who goes fast.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. Brilliant to have Juan Pablo Montoya watching trackside for us around this lap. First used by Formula One in 1996. Formula One raced in Adelaide for a long time. Then it moved to Melbourne with Albert Park, and never in the World Championship era has an Australian driver even been on the podium at this event. Can Oscar Piastri, top left of your screen, change that this weekend? He was in the hunt for the win 1 year ago.
Showing a little bit more this lap, as Mercedes are doing, with top spot Kimi Antonelli. So picture in picture is Oscar now into the final sector. The Mercedes have found more pace in the middle sector, so they're turning up the width from where they were in FP1, where they were a long old way away. You see, something like it was flat there through turn 12, so committed and using that as another area to harvest some energy. Remember, they've taken away downforce for this year, so the cars should be sliding and struggling more, but that was okay. And it's efficient for Piastri. Top spot, all on the hard tyres. And did you hear that massive cheer that went up when Juan Pablo was talking? There's a few Aston Martin fans that wondered if Fernando Alonso was even here today. He was getting in the car.
We're going to see him out on circuit in a few moments' time. Right now, in fact. So we didn't run at all, didn't even do an install lap earlier on. Fernando Alonso started his Formula One career here back in 2001. Out onto the circuit with the soft tyres.
Straight onto the softs. They've got tyres to use after not running anything earlier on. We'll see how much running he does. Aston Martin in a world of pain at the moment, including the drivers, physically being shaken around inside the car. Performance not there, reliability not there, not able to even complete the laps. And that means you're not learning anything anyway, so it's a complete disaster at the moment. Stroll has been out, he has circulated, but without doing a flying lap. Let's see what Alonso does in the other car.
Alonso getting his weekend up and running, and let's go downstairs now to Cadillac. Ruth Buscombe standing by.
Hello, down here in the pit lane in garage number 11, and unfortunately the Cadillac car has found another sensor issue. They also had a sensor issue that limited some of their running on the morning in Bahrain testing. This is super common, not only in Formula One, but especially with a new team. Formula One cars, modern day Formula One cars, run with about 300 or so sensors. They make about 1.1 million data points per second. So they're incredibly intricate things, which is very easy for a couple of things just to go wrong. It's not a big problem. Cost them a couple of hours in winter testing. It is now a race against time. They've been very kind to tell us that that's exactly what's happening. And what you can see right now is what a modern day race against time looks like in Formula One. The car is up on high stands. They are all working together. We've got chief mechanics, we've got engineers. Checo's actually going through some of the data, making sure that he's not missing any minute of going on, of understanding exactly everything as they try to diagnose and fix the problem. before the end of the session. It's good news that the driver's still in the garage. Usually that means they are closer rather than later, but it is only time will tell whether or not they can find the issue, fix the issue with the sensor, and get that car back out on track before the end of the session. It's not going anywhere in the next 10 minutes or so, she says, because it's still on high stand. So usually from the point that we drop it down till we head out is about 10 minutes. But let's see how quickly they can find it and whether or not he can rejoin the track.
Thank you, Ruth. Appreciate the update. 43 minutes to go of the second hour of practice here at the Australian Grand Prix. As we begin Formula One in 2026. And you're looking at the 35th champion in the data in testing. And they find themselves in a similar situation. So hopefully they can go out there ahead of their first ever Formula One qualifying session tomorrow. As we go back to Lando Norris. And also pushing on at the moment, Charles Leclerc on the hard tire.
It's a difference in energy management there for Norris. You can actually hear him carrying more speed in towards 9, but then having to harvest, as a result of that, a lot more in towards turn 11. So, in theory, that would make this final sector comparatively worse. And then, well, there you go. He lost an absolute chunk of time with that. So you're gaining more into turn 9, but it's always a trade-off because you just can't recharge. Turn 9 and 10, the chicane at the back, it's just so phenomenally quick. You're barely off throttle for long enough, and then you're back onto full beans for another long straight. So we are going to see a trade-off all weekend. That's going to be there. This is the toughest circuit, right up there with Jeddah, I would say, for energy management, and it's the first one. The cars are in their infancy. They have so much more to develop and to understand with it, but we are having to see massive trade-offs in terms of when cars can go effectively flat out on the straights.
George Russell setting a purple first sector, purple second sector. If you're one of our newer fans, that's fastest of anyone in the session so far. And he continues on with 2 corners to go.
Yeah, soft tyres for Russell. So once again, Mercedes getting on with it earlier than everybody else. Russell was the first to switch onto these softs in FP1, the C5. He'll come across the line and must go top, having gone from a hard tyre, and he does. Half a second quicker than Oscar Piastri. Kimi Antonelli is now starting his lap, and here he is, down towards turn 3.
Antonelli
Bumpy down there at 3.
Yeah, it really is bumpy down there. We saw a couple of lock-ups earlier on, and there's a gravel trap on the outside of the circuit to catch you out. We saw a moment for Isaac Hadjar at this corner a few moments ago.
Such a big snap, and a great illustration of how the downforce just isn't there. I mean, that's still super quick, isn't it, through turn 6. Again, a little bit of harvesting coming in there, which means that he's not having to brake as hard as he was last year, because he's arriving a bit slower, but still able to carry the speed. Here we go. Now we're ramping down in towards turn 9. But it's the same as George. Like for like through the second sector, and that's Mercedes doing something that was pretty different to Lando, at least.
Kimi Antonelli made his debut here 1 year ago, went from 4th, finished 4th from 16th on the grid. Real attacking drive. He had a few of them, including in Vegas last year. Actually finished ahead of George Russell in 3 of the last 5 Grand Prix. Finished his rookie season really strong. Good understanding as he made his way through the year. Really fallow period in the European rounds in the middle. And it's a Mercedes 1-2, 10th of a second between those drivers who have put on the soft tyres. We're going to see the soft tyres from everyone when they do their qualifying simulation. Lewis Hamilton not there yet.
No, struggling as well through that penultimate corner, 13. Waiting for the gas, and you can just hear when it picks up, the car just takes off, and Lewis has a small correction at the wheel just to keep it on the straight and narrow. And he does improve. Still on a hard tyre there for Hamilton. So the Mercedes just going early, doing their own thing, and not worried about anyone else once again. But I would say that's good from Antonelli, to be honest. He had a little bit of a lock-up at 13. The tricky final braking zone on that left-hander and was wide. And that will account for, I'd have thought, at least a 10th of a second there, which puts him right there with his teammate.
Pete Boddington is the voice that you'll hear in the ear of Kimi Antonelli. Incredibly talented engineer. Was the voice of Lewis Hamilton's ear for so long at Mercedes, and a perfect person to tutor Antonelli as he made the leap up from Formula 2 to Formula 1. Still chasing that first win. Haven't had an Italian driver on the top step of Formula 1 since 2006. Antonelli, you would imagine the odds of him changing that this year are pretty good, because certainly the way that he finished, certainly Vegas. His race pace in Vegas was absolutely phenomenal.
And Brazil. He was flying all weekend in Brazil. He found his feet, didn't he, at the end of last year? And that is so important for a rookie heading into a second season, having the winter with a bit of confidence, turning up and not feeling like you're already going to be beaten by George. Look at that sparking floor and the bouncing there. I mean, we'd have called that porpoising of years gone by. That effect isn't really in play now. We've lost the ground effect. But that's just simply another car running stiff, running over the curbs, and bouncing up and down, really scraping that underside. They're not as sensitive this year, the floors. I mean, any scrape and damage is not going to be good, but it's not going to be as costly as last year.
Lance Stroll on track. The car's slightly shorter, slightly narrower, and weighing slightly less. And that weight will come off the entire field. Williams, for example, are over the weight limit. They're not the only one as we make our way with Stroll through the rapid chicane of 9 and 10. If you ever find yourself a trackside at Albert Park, you've got to see the cars through 9 and 10. Absolutely brilliant couple of corners. And Aston Martin just logging mileage. It's as simple as that. They are way behind where they would have expected to be. And in these moments of adversity, you can foster a real team spirit. There was a real buzz in the team that they were able to get the car out for the final day of the shakedown in Barcelona. But then the reality is hit. Lance Stroll over the line, and he finds himself in 19th.
That's his first flying lap of the day, and we're halfway through FP2. So again, at least they've got a lap on the board, but this is just everything about this is painful for Aston Martin. Adrian Newey very much pointing the finger at Honda yesterday. Bearing in mind it's all a new partnership. Aston Martin, Adrian Newey with his first designed car, but joined the team a little bit late. They made changes. They're basically late on the package in terms of the chassis design. So this isn't by any means the final iteration of anyone's car, but Aston Martin are behind the curve even on that. But also for Honda, they're behind the curve as well. Switched from supplying Red Bull to basically bowing out of the sport a few years ago. We're enticed back with these new regs, but they're left behind the curve, and that is why they're really in no fit state to compete at the moment.
Yeah, and just explaining that for everyone at home, they had a full factory project. They then handed that over to Red Bull, still serviced what they had created. Red Bull have created their own power unit with Ford, but the department was disbanded. The department, people from that project were sent to other parts of the Honda Motor Company, which is their ethos of why they are in motorsport in the first place. So they've had to build the program up again, and really tricky times for them as they have this new engine formula for this year, with 50% coming from the internal combustion engine, 50% coming from the battery.
And you sort of wonder if they've underestimated the challenge, and that seems silly because everyone knew that this was going to be a massive challenge. But when you look at what Red Bull have done with their own powertrains, they've gone out and basically poached a load of people from a lot from Mercedes, who have been the standard for a long time, especially in the last iteration of power unit change in 2014, and they've got loads of experience there, whereas Honda have not done that, and they've tried to build it all back up again, as you say, trying to get the factory going again, these engines, they're incredibly complex, but other teams have managed to get it working. Audi as well, coming in fresh, new base, new power unit. They've done a great job. It's Honda really that are the outlier, quite clearly, in the fact that the car can barely do any laps right now, and there's going to be a huge development curve for everyone at Aston Martin. But the problem is, if you don't run, you can't learn anything anyway to develop. You don't know if the car's still shaking around, if you've got any sort of power, let alone how you're deploying energy around the lap and everything else. Meanwhile, we're watching Ollie Behrman, but we're watching 20 or 19 other cars because Perez is still in the garage. They're all learning.
We're saying Max Verstappen is on an outlap, and it's busy out there at the moment, so let's get another trackside view with Juan Pablo Montoya.
Hey guys, something that is really cool here is this is actually turn one, and if you can see right there is like little there's like a little hump in the middle of the corner, and if you don't get it right, and if you get a little keen, because it's such a long straight, you want to be early on the gas, and if you get it wrong, we just saw Charles get it a little wrong, and you end up on the curb on the exit, and just past the curb on that carpet that looks it looks like grass. When you get that wrong, you're going on for like a day trip through the grass. It's pretty cool because it's so inviting to like commit to the gas and go really hard, but there's so little room for error here. Again, the Mercedes looks so solid. It is crazy to see how stable it is. So it's, as you can see in the lap times, they're there and they keep showing more, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, but it's really cool to watch out here.
Juan Pablo Montoya, who has had some amazing battles around this racetrack. Have a look through the archive, no matter where you're watching. Have a look through the archive at Juan Pablo Montoya racing Michael Schumacher around here. Just epic gloves-off racing of the finest caliber.
Watching Michael Schumacher anywhere, it all counts. It's all great racing action.
George Russell's been through the gravel, turn number 3. We've been highlighting it earlier for you in the program. It's a corner that the drivers have been thinking about since Bahrain, because if you do that in race conditions, it's just going to delete your position in the race.
Or in qualifying. Do you remember a couple of years ago, Sergio Perez was on the back foot, missed a bit of practice, came straight out in qualifying, had a lock up there, and was just out in the Red Bull that was the class of the field then. So this circuit is punishing. George has got away with this one, but let's see to what extent. Massive front right flat spot off that one, huge lock up, just in way too deep. And this is more like what we saw in Bahrain. It's bumpy, you can see there, just pitter-patter over the bumps. When the car's fully loaded, you're on the edge of adhesion there with braking and then starting to turn it in as well. And when you then have a little bit of bumpiness, you lose the contact patch of the tyre, you more easily lock it up, especially if you're braking as late as George was on that lap on a soft tyre still. So we're starting to see signs a few times with drivers pushing that limit once again. Also remember that there's a tailwind down there, so they are arriving a bit quicker. They've got a little bit less downforce when they get there as well. Something to watch out for as we go through the weekend.
Track temperature is 33 degrees, air temperature is 22. We are at about 29 minutes past 4 local time. Grand Prix, if it all runs to a green flag, will be coming to the end at this stage on Sunday.
Lovely lowering sun. Hamilton's out there on a soft tyre right now. I would like to see how he's doing.
I was like, Palmer's going to request something.
Yeah,
let's hear it in his voice.
Well, he's within a 10th in the first sector, but he's bailed out in the middle. Oh, so okay. He's waiting. He's giving us a chance to catch him through the first sector, hopefully next time around.
Yeah.
Let me just highlight then, whilst we're waiting for Lewis to go again, also waiting for Charles Leclerc. Charles on a hard tyre still and trying to improve. Lando, by the way, back in the pits on a different run plan today, but not hooking much up. I want to highlight again Lindblad. 3/10 up on Lawson. They've both just run a soft tyre. Hadjar on a soft pips him by a couple of tenths. Lindblad is having an absolutely stellar day.
Yeah, he really is. 6th place finisher in Formula 2 last year. Of course, therefore, 5 drivers in front of him in the championship going, really, why not me? Red Bull having the faith in him and the faith in the program to advance him. 18 years of age is still very young for a Formula 1 driver. 4th youngest all time. So Red Bull, even though they've got this grand history of promoting drivers, they've promoted him really quickly. 3-time race winner in Formula 2, but it's his performances in mixed conditions when your sort of raw driving ability is directly on show. Formula 3, Silverstone, amazing drive there. Any single time it's just down to the finger-tipping talent of the drivers. He's looked outstanding.
And he's looked very strong so far today. Leclerc was on a soft tyre and he did jump up to 3rd place. We missed it, but let's not miss Lewis Hamilton, because here he goes again. Up, let's listen in. So that's what's called a super clip now, where he's keeping his foot flat down to the ground. He's got active aero, so the straight mode on, where you can see the wings popping up in a sort of DRS style, but the car, you can just actually hear it decelerating as the MG UK starts to harvest rather than deploy energy up towards turn 9. Everyone has to do it, so it sounds slow, but it's something that everyone's dealing with as Lewis lays down some rubber out of the penultimate corner. He's been struggling a little bit with that one all day.
It's still looking lively for Lewis Hamilton. The time fell away at the end there, but he's not too far away from his old team, where he rewrote the record books. Hamilton can get more compliance in the third sector. Antonelli, Russell, Hamilton and Leclerc. The recharging of the battery into 9 and 10 having to be done so he doesn't run out of juice before the end of the lap, where it would be far more of a loss. That's why they're having to do that in that fast section of the racetrack.
Yeah, if you don't do it there, you have to do it in towards turn 11, but it seems most of the teams have worked out that doing it into 9 is the best way, and then you're even easier on the approach. It's barely a break then as you turn in towards that first left-hander. Lindblad's we've just been waxing lyrical. He's going to improve. Let's see him. Last few corners then, riding the curb, neat and smooth.
Everyone else is thinking, how on earth do I get this to work? This is the fastest car he's ever driven. He doesn't have to relearn anything.
The faster the car, the better the driver. Final corner, picking an upshift, opening up that rear wing and the front wing this year. Finds another couple of tenths. Oh, don't say it. The Racing Bull's quicker than the Red Bull.
It is for the moment. Max Verstappen's only run on the medium tyres. His start to the session interrupted. And another strong lap on a strong day. Only practice. But Arvid Lindblad loving life in Formula 1 so far. Franco Colapinto. Little bit of AstroTurf. Little bit of gravel. And lap interrupted.
Yeah, limit of rear braking as well as the front. You can see the lock up there, but it was already starting to get a little bit lively as he hit the brakes and banged it down the gears very, very quickly to get that rear braking and try and get that on some energy harvesting as well. It is going to be tricky, the braking phases. Turn 1 hasn't been so much, but turn 3 is a big old stop. We've seen the bumps, we know the tailwind, and we're seeing more and more issues down there.
Oscar Piastri peeling out of the way of the racing line. Piastri, who is on an outlap at the moment. So Antonelli, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc, Oscar Piastri in 5th. Lando Norris down in 15th. And Carlos Sainz currently out of the car, watching on. Williams had a hydraulic issue with Alex Albon that interrupted his running. He's currently the 14th fastest driver, 1.9 seconds off the pace. And the boy from Brighton, suburb of Melbourne, who grew up being able to hear engines in the back garden, now piloting one of the cars. He's been a grid kid here. He'll be desperate to stand on the podium this weekend. And he's rotating the car and then some through 3.
Yeah, getting it down from Melbourne to Brighton. We're getting a street address for him next. Get really specific on where he's from. Fastest first sector for Oscar then, on the soft tyres. McLaren waiting a little bit longer than the other front runners. We're still waiting for Verstappen as well. He's just left the pits on a soft, but had that slow start to the session. Building speed and then just dropping it as we head towards 9 then. Classic energy harvesting section. Still quick through the corners. Then don't mistake the fact that the drivers are still pushing the limit of grip through all these corners. Some of the straights are where they're harvesting, but they still then have to hook that up and calibrate that in their minds, how hard they can push and attack into the corners. Piastri had a good run earlier on, didn't he? He was in the garage for a while. He's got better rear grip than Hamilton through the penultimate corner, keeping it going to the line.
Oscar Piastri, fastest at Albert Park by 0.2 of a second. A little bit of understeer through the 13th corner of the racetrack. Not much though. Charles Leclerc's attacking on. Fastest middle sector so far for Ferrari. Driver who was fastest in testing in Bahrain and fastest earlier on in FP1.
So picking it up in the straight line now, the Ferrari. Still shuffling the wheel through his hands through turn 13, which has been really larging it as well out of the final corner. That barrier comes up close. And sadly, I know it only too well.
I'm glad you said it, because if not, I would have had to. And I don't want to start the year off like that.
Yeah. What's the trend? It's 10 years ago. Because luckily that one was 9 years ago. So I'll wait next year for 10 years ago in FP2. Me backwards into that wall.
On board, Max Verstappen, soft tyre attached to the car. Piastri 2/10 clear of Antonelli. Russell 3/10 back. Hamilton lively car through the final sector. Charles Leclerc has got that great middle sector, but it's not worked for him at the end. Verstappen, you can see the active aero. Rear wing element closes, front wing element closes. That's 5 zones around the racetrack where that's available, and that's every lap for every car.
Bit of a swapper for Max on the exit of turn 12 there. Again, trying to feed in that throttle. You've got tyres starting to overheat. You've got so much torque. But overall, it's actually clean through the last couple of corners. So let's see where Max is going to jump up to. He gets ahead of Arvid Lindblad. Red Bull back ahead of Racing Bulls, and Verstappen up into 6th. Not far away from the Ferraris, but that's a fair gap now to the Mercedes-powered cars.
Oscar Piastri having a party, then 2 Mercedes, 2 Ferraris, a Red Bull own car, then another Red Bull. Here's Lewis Hamilton, turn 3. Those bumps. Catching out another driver. How about one with 7 world championships through the gravel and back onto the circuit at turn 4?
Yeah, it didn't look like he had the early deceleration, so when he hit the brakes initially, didn't get the car to bite and really slow down. That left him carrying plenty towards that apex. Then he has the bumps as well, and then a lock-up, and he is skittling well into the gravel with that one. So it's caught out George Russell and Lewis Hamilton now finding the gravel. Add in a sprinkling of Franco Colapinto too, and that is certainly looking like the bogey corner so far today. He's pushing again, Hamilton.
On the exit of 4, slightly more conservative through 5 than Isaac Hadjar was earlier on. He's in touch with Oscar Piastri. And now it's the flat-out section. This is where the car being put through its paces, but again, it's going to have to do a little bit of recharging at some point of this flat-out run to 9 and 10.
Well, Leclerc has the fastest middle sector of anyone so far, so let's see if Hamilton's following suit. It's quick. It's not as quick as his teammate. 10th and a half away from what Charles managed in that sector. Now we'll see if he can hold it, because this is where Ferrari have been struggling. As he's going right out to the grass, maxing the track width on the corner entry to 12.
Okay, couple to go. 2-time winner around Melbourne. That's more compliant than we've seen for Hamilton. Let's see if it works on the stopwatch. British driver over the line, 0.3 of a second. Improvement in sector 3, and 4th position for him. He's 0.3 of a second away from Oscar Piastri.
So small nudges from both Ferrari drivers. Hamilton looks comfortable, doesn't he? In that relative battle, Hamilton and Leclerc driving the same car, this is the most competitive I've seen Lewis for a long time. Circuit that he likes, and a car that clearly is responding to what he's wanting, really, by and large. I mean, we're seeing a few slides, but everyone's having some level of handling constraint. But for Lewis, he's able to be consistently on it, and he's close to the pace, but I do think the Mercedes power cars have just turned the wick up, and they've shown a bit more.
Pierre Gasly, French driver with the French team, but with a new power unit in the back of the car. No longer Renault built, although the team is Renault owned. It's a Mercedes power unit in the back of the car, and we go on board with him. The driver is currently down in 17th, so they're getting used to that customer relationship rather than a bespoke full works team. They had it for 1 year, 2015. The team that's been based in Enstone and known by so many names through the years. So they have had experience of that a while back, admittedly. Gasly improves his position by 1. Carlos Sainz still in the pits, still out of the car in 17th. And waiting to see what the world champion can do. Lando Norris, car number 1. Really tough session earlier on with a gearbox issue, but you can see weaving around, building up for a push.
It's another super aggressive outlap, this one. Picking a downshift through 9 and 10, but keeping the speed really high, making sure he's got front tyres, because now he's got to back off it and get that battery topped up to start the lap. So hopefully we stay with him and just see how an outlap works in this new generation of Formula 1. Aggressive on the fronts for 2 sectors. Now he backs off, delivers partial throttle between the last two corners. So we come out of the last corner, wait for it, now go. You can just see the moment he puts his foot down. It's like a safety car restart, the way that they're launching, and into the lap he goes.
Oh, fighting a little bit through the first turn. Into another straight zone with the active aero. Breaking down and the elements closing. Norris, and then McLaren's rotating really nicely through three. Let's see whether Norris stacks up nicely in comparison to his teammates. Such a great championship battle the top three put on last year, all the way to the end. He's 3/10 off.
And Piastri is the fastest man through the first sector. So Norris is well down on laps today, and even more so down on competitive laps. So you can see he's just run the hard tyres so far until this moment. So he's going to be learning a little bit more as the grip comes up on this C5. 2 steps, obviously, from the hard to the soft, flashing into 9. Bringing it back to the left-hand side, opening up 10, because then you're onto this long straight again. We're going to pick him up on the right-hand side. He's lost somewhere behind the grandstand.
You've got the lake, you've got the cricket.
Lovely scenery.
Cricket pitches, you've got the general admission, and there we go.
Bit of football, and here we go. Last couple of corners. He might have been all right through there, he might not have been, but let's find out as he goes across the line.
We'll look at the time, shall we? We'll look at the time. We'll have a guess. 19.7 is the time to beat, exactly a second behind Lando Norris. Slots in behind Max Verstappen. P7, he did lose a lot of time earlier on. But it's Piastri. For all of the talk of Mercedes and Ferrari, it's the world champion team in McLaren that are currently top with 17 minutes to go.
And McLaren were very much... They've sort of spent most of the year saying we're 4th fastest, which then became, maybe we're 3rd fastest in the last week of Bahrain. And then I feel like we turned up here and there's been a few people saying, don't completely rule us out, guys. We might not be winning, but we're not far away. And certainly on this lap, and so far this session, Oscar's been very dialed in. 2/10 clear of the 2 Mercedes. Now, there may still be more to come from, well, there will be more to come from everyone, but comparatively more from the Mercedes. But that car has the same power unit. We know how well they can develop a car. We know the correlation between everything that goes on back at Woking, at the base, the wind tunnel, the CFD as well, all the design of the car. It's one thing making it work on the numbers. It's another thing then putting it on the car, driving it around at high speed and finding downforce. And they're very good at doing that. And that won't change this year, even if the cars are very different. So it's no surprise that they're in the mix.
Valtteri Bottas out there, Cadillac having an issue with Sergio Perez. You can see he's not been able to leave the garage at all. Doesn't even have an install app in this session. So that's cost him all of FP2 as it stands. So all of their data being accrued by Valtteri Bottas.
By the way, Aston Martin, 11 laps for Stroll, 9 for Alonso. So still, stuck, rooted to the bottom. Still with all the difficulties we've mentioned at length, but they have quietly been accumulating some laps out there today. So I guess expectations have just gone to the floor in terms of what they might achieve. A team that had hoped at one point to be using this set of regs as a chance to bounce to the front have gone the other way, but they're at least learning, as Valtteri's learning not to hook up so much apex curb and then get on the gas.
Yeah, big correction. Former winner around here, and a famous team radio message to boot as he crossed the line. Valtteri Bottas starting that season really, really well. Winner, massive margin, and hoping to launch a championship challenge that never came in his Mercedes years, but a 10-time Grand Prix winner. 2019, he won by over 20 seconds at this event.
So Lindblad low-speed corners 1.5 tenths ahead of Lawson. Overall, he's done an amazing job so far today. 20.9 compared to Lawson on 21.3, so 4 tenths between them, 1.5 tenths in the low speed. The low speed it feels as a driver like the fiddly stuff. It's not what you sign up for as a driver. You sign up for the high speed, obviously the top speed, the big braking zones, but really drilling it through those fast chicanes. That's where you get the biggest buzz. But in terms of where you find the most lap time, it's in the low-speed corners, which is always really annoying because you want to be rewarded for the really fast stuff. And Lindblad's obviously just got a great technique with it at the moment to be to be up on his teammate, down on experience, but up on pace right now. And you mentioned earlier on, 6th in F2. So 5 guys beat him last year, and he's the guy that gets the shot. We're seeing right now he is really talented. Whether this cements in the race weekend or not, through qualifying in the race, who knows? But this is not a guy that's too raw for Formula One. Already you can say that. But I'm also thinking, who was the last guy that jumped into Formula One and kind of disappointed? They're all really good, the young crop. You look at Behrman, giving Ocon all manner of headaches. You look at Antonelli, now in a Mercedes and looking like he could even fight for a title. He's up on George Russell right now. Bortoletto, F2 champ last year. Very competitive against Nico Hülkenberg. The list just goes on and on. Hadjar, promoted. Yuki Tsunoda out of a drive. Lawson stays there. And Hadjar's up alongside Red Bull. The young crop, they're all very good. And they come to Formula One, even with limited testing, they come so well prepared with loads of detail, even getting sort of shepherded through F2 in a junior program. F2 really is full of talent, even through the depth of it.
Yeah, as proven by a really good opening day in championship specification for Arvid Lindblad, who's 8th in the qualifying simulations that we've seen so far. Audi are 12th and 14th. Alex Brundle, something with Audi's caught your eye?
Well, something with Audi caught your eye, Mr. James, and I'm here to herald your beady eye, because you spotted earlier on some sparks from the rear of Nico Hülkenberg's car as he went down the front straight, and you answered for me a question. The straight mode reduces the drag, but it also reduces the downforce. It's also driver operated, both in its application and in the ability to manually turn it off. So the answer to the question I had is, what happens if the driver just doesn't or turns it off by mistake? And with Nico Hülkenberg, we got a sense of what exactly happens when that occurs, with the Audi coming down the front straight behind a Mercedes. Nico's here making his move around the outside of the Mercedes and appears to mistakenly or very early knock off straight mode. Look, there. That immediately has the effect which you saw on the ride height, pretty catastrophic, and it hits the ground really, really hard. So really interesting that if the drivers do forget or mistakenly switch off that straight mode, it is possible that they just plain ground out. Now, I've got 2 engineers to the right-hand side of me who are going to explain how and why that occurs.
Well, thanks, Alex. I mean, that is something Pirelli had to simulate coming into this season, because if that straight mode does, or if there is an active aero failure during Grand Prix and a driver has to go down a straight with the wings closed, it is going to put a lot more aerodynamic load through the car. But to talk about aerodynamic loads, well, why not just talk to an aerodynamicist? Emil. Oh, before we do that, there's some aerodynamic parts going flying off a Red Bull. Emil, what does an aerodynamicist think when you see something like that, the wing closing on the straight?
Well, I think it's strange. It's a bit odd because it's not very intuitive. When you're on a straight, you would want to go as fast as possible. When you're on a straight, you would want to go as fast as possible. And when you close the flaps, so engage the flaps, you actually increase drag, which is not what you want. You also increase downforce, which is what you saw there, because that's why the rear is going down. But you wouldn't want that on the straights because it's slowing you down.
Well, we just need to come back because this is a spectacular moment here with Max Verstappen. Alex, you and Jolien are really seeing some spectacular stuff there.
Appreciate the insight, guys. Excellent input from all 3. World-class reactions, as you'd expect from Max Verstappen. You can have an enormous accident if you go off there, as proven last year by Ollie Behrman.
Yeah, he tried to do the Behrman line and then had the skills at that point to save it, didn't he? A little bit of it was actually really similar to that Behrman incident from last year in Friday practice. Bit of understeer in 10. So he opened up the corner as the line is through 9 to sweep it back to the left-hand side. Opens up 10 and then just picks up a hint of understeer as he turns it in. Misses the apex by a fraction, gets out on the dirtier stuff as Juan Pablo was talking. The track gets rubbered in, but as soon as you're off that line, especially in those high-speed corners, it doesn't take much to throw you off. then he has the oversteer, and then he's in the gravel. But Max being Max manages to scoop it up and get himself back onto the circuit, but not before he's a bit of carbon fibres broken free from the Red Bull. So it's not been the easiest day for him, and them generally.
Will Joseph, who you heard on the radio to Lando Norris, has always been his race engineer in Formula One, all the way to the World Championship title last year. McLaren, 2 times Constructors' champions back-to-back. Ferrari heading into year 18 without a trophy at the end of the year. I'll be hoping this is the year to change it. Charles Leclerc, quick excursion, only the grass, not the gravel.
Ever so loose on the way in. He loves to drive with a sort of on the edge of a tail happy car. Obviously you can go too much. That was too much for Leclerc. But yeah, just trying to get the deceleration. Too much there on the rear axle and having a bit of rear locking. So he's another driver that's in the wars. I mean, the complexity of just across the board is it's just so intense. Speaking about, I mean, hearing the guys talking about the active aero and Hulkenberg pressing the button and then he's suddenly grinding out. But it's across the board, the difficulties. Pierre Gasly was telling me a couple of weeks ago in Bahrain, Alpine have the different rear wing opening. So we're seeing a lot of sort of DRS slot gaps, as the Aston Martin momentarily showed us there. The lesser spotted Aston Martin still out on circuit. But the other cars there, the Ferrari and the McLaren, both look like they've got sort of DRS open, and they look like having a nice little race down towards 9 as well. But Alpine have the top slot opens, so the upper element comes down. Looks very eye-catchingly different, but Pierre was telling me if he doesn't manually shut that, he doesn't have the airflow when he wants to hit the brakes. And he was saying, well, hang on, braking's hard enough anyway. If I don't remember to press that one lap for one corner, I'm going to be spinning off in the race. That's one part of the intensity of what the drivers are going to be thinking about, as well as trying to drive a Formula One car as fast as possible. To have that in your mind when you're lining up a late move to dive up the inside at a corner like this in the Grand Prix, you do that, but you haven't manually shut your active aero. I don't think this is the case for all teams, but certainly Alpine, with their more extreme one, have that, and it's everywhere. the difficulties for the drivers.
Yeah, juggling so much, but that's a great direct example of something that the Alpine drivers are having to think about. 16th and 18th for Sergio Perez got out onto the circuit, but he's been immediately told to stop the car with an issue, preventative, not to cause any more damage to the rest of their weekend. And session to forget for the Mexican driver returning to Formula One this year after a year out and no time on the board. This was going to be his first lap of the day, of the session.
Plenty to learn, isn't there, for Cadillac? Getting up to speed. Nick Chester on the pit wall, Pat Simmons on the pit wall. Loads and loads of experience there in the technical department. Loads of experience in the garage, but still finding their feet with operations. And the virtual safety car is out, whilst the marshals can then retrieve Perez's car and get everyone else running for the last few minutes. It's going to be an interesting battle, isn't it, between Perez and Bottas as well? Two sort of number 2 drivers, Red Bull and Mercedes, so linked in those iconic years, culminating in 2021, and now they're in the same team that are basically going to have nothing to race apart from each other for the first chunk of the year at least. It's going to be a fascinating dynamic, and if you're Checo here, you're seeing Valtteri rack up the laps, get to within 4 seconds. He's only a second away from the back of Colapinto. That's an achievable target for Cadillac to close that up pretty quickly. But they at least have to be beating each other and have to show that they're getting the maximum out of the car. And if Perez or Bottas is just routinely a couple of tenths away, you know, you're still fighting for your career. You're still fighting to show that you're at the top of your game, and you're always compared to your teammate in that instance. Do you remember Heikki Kovalainen and Jarno Trulli?
I do.
In the Lotus/Caterham days.
I do.
Were 2 race-winning drivers who ended up in a new startup, which was Team Lotus, which became Caterham. And basically, Kovalainen absolutely drilled Trulli, who didn't get up to speed with that car at all. And it was quite quickly the end for Jarno, who didn't have a great time, having had a career basically being quick in a lot of different cars.
Especially in qualifying. Trulli was absolutely rapid. A moment off the racetrack for Isaac Hadjar. Lock up into the 13th corner of 14 around this layout.
Absolutely miles off the circuit as well. And we're seeing a few times drivers just not even being near. I mean, there was no chance he was stopping that for the corner. Nearly found the barriers. And I think on occasion that's because the entry speeds are a little bit higher than drivers are expecting as well. So we've seen a lot of harvesting energy through turn 12, that right-hander, before the braking zone there. But if you're getting a bit more deployment than you were on the last lap or than you're expecting, you just arrive to turn 13, which comes up in the blink of an eye anyway. You're peeling the car back to the right-hand side. And if you're just arriving 5 kph quicker, you need to be braking about 5 meters earlier. But if you brake at the same point, you're going to just be nailing it way across the grass. And I think that's what happened there with Hadjar.
Well, there's some parts of the circuit where you can get away with that. Not all around here.
Not many around here.
Not many at all. Gravel to be found, walls very, very close at so many parts of the circuit.
It's good though, isn't it?
It's a great venue. It's a wonderful place to go motor racing. And Lewis Hamilton certainly enjoyed that in qualifying. 8 times on pole position around here. Looking to return himself minimum to the front row, something he didn't have last year in Formula 1 for the first time in his illustrious career. 20 seasons in Formula 1. Lewis Hamilton continuing on. This is going to be his second campaign with Ferrari, and they look to start the year in much better shape than they did one year ago when they did have 7 podiums with Charles Leclerc, but no victories.
Was it sort of 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, that there's a lot of mutterings, oh, Lewis is really into his fashion, he's really into his music, maybe he's gonna not be here for the long haul, he's gonna dip out and go and follow another career or another life passion. Oh, we got another top line driver into the gravel at 3. Hey, well, we're on a hat trick.
Full set coming your way. Again, another lock up over those bumps at 3, and that has always been a gravel trap. It remains to be the case, and Charles Leclerc able to recover. Leclerc in 5th place here, having topped the session earlier on. Verstappen ahead of Norris. Norris losing a lot of laps earlier on, 2nd back. But he is still continuing on into the final minute. Huge attendance today. Huge crowd lining this circuit. It was big on Thursday, it was big on Friday. Expecting so many through the gates. Tomorrow and the first Grand Prix of the year coming your way with a lot to be answered. You have to say, the Piastri lap, a little bit of an outlier compared to expectations. If you remove Piastri from the order, okay, usual suspects from testing out front, but Piastri proving McLaren's still in the mix. And same specification, the power unit, 2 Mercedes. They only got that for this Grand Prix, didn't have it in testing. You only receive it as a customer at the first event. Charles Leclerc doing a little bit of data gathering, slipstream-wise. And he's able to get past the Audi into 9 and 10, as he will take the checkered flag the next time he goes past our commentary box.
I think if you have a faster car, you're going to be able to overtake pretty easily around this circuit. So all of the energy harvesting that you're watching into the corners at the end of long straights, basically, into 9 and 10 particularly, but a little bit more